Okay, we're good to go.
Hey, good evening, council and staff, and those out in what I call Zoom land. This electronic meeting is available on the town's website at greaternapanee.com and is being streamed to the public on the town's YouTube channel. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Council's Rules of Procedure Bylaw, and Code of Conduct.
You know, I was freaking. Oh my God. That's nothing.
Okay. Mr. Eddington, if you could just make sure that you're muted there until we get into the meeting, please. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Council's Rules of Procedure Bylaw, and Code of Conduct and other pertinent legislation apply to these electronic proceedings as if they were in person. I will do a roll call of the members of council. The clerk will do a roll call for the members that are the staff members that are on with us. If any member of council's connection to the meeting is interrupted, then the mayor will call a recess of the meeting until the member can reconnect, either by internet or telephone. If the member is not available to reconnect within 5 minutes, then the meeting will resume. Councillor Johnson.
I'm here. Sorry, I was expecting to be last.
No, I'm doing this alphabetically just to trick you. Councillor McCormack.
Present.
Councillor Norrie.
Present.
Councillor Pennell.
Present.
Councillor Richardson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Present.
And obviously the mayor is present. Susan, what staff do we have on with us this evening, please?
We have Raymond Callery, CAO, Paul Dauber, who's the General Manager of Financial Services Treasurer, Grant Zatterberg, who's General Manager of Community and Corporate Services, Rob Sturson, who's General Manager of Emergency Services Fire Chief, Brianna Clement, who's the Community Engagement Clerk, and Michael Nobes, who's Director of Development Services.
Thank you. With that, I will call the meeting to order. We have an adjustment or an addendum to the agenda. 4.3.5 will be a letter that we received today by email from Brian King, which we have all said could be added to the agenda this evening. So with that, I would look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Items for discussion. I need a motion for the adoption of the special session of the minutes for the special session of council August 18th. Councillor McCormack, Councillor Norrie, all in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Also for the special session of council August 25th. I need a motion as well. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Richardson, all in favor of that motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 4.3, we have deputations. Susan, I'll let you take it from here and allow Mr. Eddington and Mr. Cannon and Mr. Miller in so that I know that they're with us, please.
Mr. Eddington, if you could just unmute yourself, please.
Don, there'll be a button. There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Mayor Zvester.
So you go right ahead.
Oh, okay, perfect. Actually, I think we're going to start in with Mr. Cannon, and then we're going to have Gary come in, and then I'm going to come in as the finish guy on this one.
Clean up batter, okay?
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll just pass that over to you, Bob.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, good evening.
My name is Bob Cannon, and I live right across the road from the entranceway to his place. And when there's trucks going out of there, they are right over into the southbound driving lane to swing out. And they're out there for, I would say, 100, 125 feet. And if they're coming out with a pup trailer, they're out there for almost, well, way over 200 feet, driving on the wrong side of the road at probably topping out around 10 miles an hour. Their school buses stop at 3 of those 6 houses in the morning and afternoon. And there's going to be an accident out there just as sure as anything, just because shift changes down at the cement plant and in town and the hydro plant and people in a hurry, they just ain't going to have the patience. And when they're stopped there early in the morning to get the gate open, they're parked on the shoulder of the road, which is slowly deteriorating from the weight of the vehicles. And they're also blocking most of the southbound driving lane. And there's going to be people in it. They're just not going to sit behind waiting for him to pull in. They're going to dart out and around, and there's going to be a head-on collision. Also, I'm talking too fast.
No, you're just fine.
Our property values have gone down so much since he's opened up there. I bought that house I live in, well, we bought it, my wife and I, in 1988, 32 years ago. And I just bet you I couldn't even get now today the money we paid for it back then, just because of the mess he's made across the road. And our taxes, I think all the property should be reevaluated if he's allowed to be open. And emergency vehicles, figured Dundas and Center Street. And one of them trucks wanting to go out to this place and trying to make a left-hand turn at Dundas and Center Street. He's not going to be able to do it. And that'll jam traffic up something fierce. And let's just say at the same time, when they say it can never get no worse, there's a fire or an emergency out this way and they need ambulances. And they won't be able to get to them because of that big traffic jam in town. And it'll all be because they're wanting to come out to this pit. And that's about it for me, I guess.
Okay, Mr. Cannon.
It's just that I like, and the wells, like this first blast he done this year, that was overloaded. There was no blasting mats used like he said he did. I had pictures on my basement wall downstairs, prints. They're a good size, and they were all tipped to the north after that blast. So there's your foundation getting wiggled around with all that pressure coming through the ground. Our septic systems, our wells, it's getting to be like, it's just crazy the way he works over there with no disregard for anybody but himself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cannon.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Council, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cannon?
Oh,
No, I guess not. Thank you, Mr. Cannon.
you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Gary Miller. I actually just live north of the quarry, and I guess I'm next on the agenda.
Yeah, sure.
The one thing I would echo, and kind of what Bob has already said, is that we already have kind of like a quarter-mile drag strip down in front of our house that comes down from where the storage building is down. So we were just saying that we didn't really know what they could do, but maybe the speed should be at least continued at 60 all the way to the bottom of the hill, rather than the 80 that, just when you come around the bend there. But, and we've also discussed whether that would even do any good, but we were just trying to think, with the commercial traffic that will be going in and out of there and trucks stopped. And I don't know, maybe a traffic study. You guys know more about the traffic issues than me, but we were just talking about that. And of course, the thing is that I think we're a little bit concerned about the whole thing about the stuff that gets hauled in there. Like in the wintertime, they also use that as a dump site for hauling snow in. And we just want to make sure that there isn't material of a contaminated nature that's kind of going to be hauled in there and dumped there and get into the water course. So just kind of mention that. And also, like as a property owner, as Bob has already said, is that we are concerned about our wells, and we're concerned about our property values, and it just that when we moved here, like I say, Morley just had that little old quarry there. We just thought we had a farmer's field up behind, and now it's kind of, you know, been a real change of usage, really. So it's just concerns, really. Like I hope that if he going to continue with his business, that he can work with the people around here, because a lot of it's been a big surprise. Like, you know, he just kind of starts things, and then I'm glad Don picked up the ball, because, you know, he just kind of went ahead and did whatever he wanted. So thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Don. Does anyone have any questions directed to Don?
To Gary.
Gary.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I'm looking for Don to come on next. Sorry.
Yeah, he'll be next. Yep.
No questions, Council? Okay. Thank you very much, Gary.
Thanks, Mayor.
Batter up. Thank you.
On door.
Okay, Don, you're up.
All right. First, I'd like to thank you, Mayor Asbester, and town councilors for allowing us to have our say and addressing our concerns. We all bought our beautiful rural homes out here for the peace and quiet that comes along with living in the country. We are ideally located. We are 10 minutes from the 401. We're 5 minutes from town. We're 3 minutes from the golf course. This is ideal location. Everything was great out here until the juggernaut that is Al White started bringing in all his aggregate and all his stuff, and he's completely destroyed the serenity that we once had with the peace and quiet that we all enjoyed. That's gone. It's out the window now. The noise that comes out of that quarry on a daily basis is mind-numbing. From 8 hours worth of backup sirens a day to dump gates slamming of all hours a day up until 10, 11 o'clock at night when he's in there dumping snow. It's the dirt and the dust clouds that envelop the entire area. On the first day of his blasting of this year, on June 15th, the dust cloud did come all the way over across County Road 8. No traffic was stopped, and it created a zero visibility barrier too. So we ended up running in our houses because there was tons of dirt in the air. We had to run through to the back, and we could still see it going through the back fields. There was so much just dirt and dust and debris in the air coming from the blast from using no mats. On the second day that he had blasted, which was June 16th of this year, the blast that went off and the wind had changed directions and was taking it towards the Hamburg Road. And the problem there is that's where Ben Hogan keeps his bees. So he has apiaries in there. And the reason why he has his apiaries in there is due to the dust that he has where he lives on the 33 from the cement factory. So he uses, it is a hatchery right in behind there. And he's less than 70 meters away from where he's dynamiting, and all that quarry dust is going to a lot of limestone dust. Also, when he'd fired up the crusher earlier this year, all that limestone dust all went right up through the seam, across the tracks, and back into those woods again. So that's going directly after his bees. And when I talked to Mr. Hogan, he had told me that he'd already lost over 80% of his hives in the last few years, and he's working on rebuilding his hives. So he wasn't impressed with that, and he's not sure if he's going to have to move his bees out of that area or not. The diesel truck stink that comes along with it, as long as all the rest of the heavy machinery noise and the heavy truck traffic in and out, it's unbearable here now compared to what our peacefulness we once had. In the last 2 years, he has blasted 4 times. And it creates an imminent threat to our wells and to our houses. It negatively impacts every residence in our area. Every time he dynamites, it shakes our houses. Each and every one of us shakes our houses. You know, it's wrong. It should not be happening. And one thing to note is that when the last time they blasted, they did put a seismometer on Mr. Cannon's front lawn right next door to me. And the measurement came in at 12 millimeters. So there's a 12 millimeter shift in the ground from that last blast. The upper allowable limit is 12.5 millimeters. So they're 0.5 millimeters below the allowable limit, but still that's 1.2 centimeters that our houses are shaking when he's detonating over there. It's not good for our foundations, not good for our wells, our septics. It's not good for anything. And it comes down to this is, it's an incompatible land usage and an incompatible zoning with the rest of the residences around here. And it's definitely not in the best interest to the residents. Everything that he does over there, it affects our water rights, it affects our property rights, and it also affects our property values. What I'd like to address is a Class B quarry permit that he does have that everybody says he is in compliance with. Yes, he is in compliance with that. But here's the problem with the 93 Class B quarry permits. They were issued in 1993 under the Bob Ray government, and it was a way to collect mineral rights from farmers. It was a grandfathered clause, and they were handed out like sliced white bread in a day. All you had to do was make an application, and it was grandfathered. If you'd ever removed aggregate or sand or soil from your farm and sold it, you were guaranteed to get one of these 93B permits. Whether you kept selling it or not was irrelevant. It was all about generating income for the Crown, because even if you didn't remove any of your aggregate or sand or soil and sell it, you still had to pay mineral rights to the Crown of 2 cents per ton on your 20,000 ton allotted maximum. So that was mineral rights and money that was paid to. On the other hand, if it is removed, there's a sliding scale of how much it increases in value, but it's only up to, I think the top end is about 18 cents per ton of aggregate removed. So it was put in place by Bob Ray's government just to encourage the mineral rights and the wealth that's generated from it. That being said, after Bob Ray's government was out in 1997, the government had to change the rulings and the zonings towards pits and quarries because there was a lot of problems with nuisance quarries. So 1997, the rules were changed around quarries. And so further on till today, we now have the Aggregate Reform Act that is it's in Queen's Park. It's had its first reading, but has not been passed yet because they have COVID and opening up everything else in the schools back. So it's not a priority for them right now, but it will be coming back into play, definitely. And the reason why the Aggregate Reform Act has been started is to get rid of all these 93B permits. There are nuisance quarries. There has been quite a few of them that have had OMB rulings on them. That have been taken to the OMB and have had their licenses rescinded due to OMB rulings. So it's nothing new in Ontario. People have been dealing with this for years. And it's just, this is on a much greater scale than it ever was before. I found it interesting to listen to the last town hall meeting in which Mr. White had stated that the quarry itself is only 7 acres. 7 acres is just a little spit of land for a quarry. Most quarries, and there's no shortage of them in this area, are huge enterprises. 7 acres it doesn't make sense. And he plans on blasting this for another 22 years. He's going to turn that field into a soup bowl. If he blasts that another 22 times, that's what's going to happen. And that is going to cause irreparable damage, A, to the land, because we can't grow that back, to our wells. And if he doesn't tap out our wells, he's probably there's a higher probability that he pops a sulfur seam and we all end up with sulfur in our wells. That's nothing that we want to deal with out here. We already have low flow wells. We are stewards of our own wells, being rural residents. We understand these things, and we don't need any outside influences impacting our water or our rights to live out here any more than what they already have been. It's wrong. It comes around as it's wrong. Okay, it was incompatible. Okay, so this is about our water rights, which is an international right. And the funny thing, I was coming down a rock cut, and just outside of the Tomlinson quarry, there is a sign on the north side of number 2 that says Safe Water Drinking Protection Zone. And I've seen that coming into town, and it's a quandary because it's right below the quarry at Tomlinson's. And I thought, well, maybe that's just for the people in town. That doesn't apply to us. Of that, I am unsure. That was my own thinking on it, right? Our property rights are being infringed upon. We can't enjoy our backyards the way that we used to because of the noise, because of the dust, because of the dirt, because of everything involved with it. And where we live on County Road 8, coming in and out of our laneways, it is nothing but an eyesore. It looks like a dump over there. Everything's piled up so high. The garbage and everything that's piled primarily right in front of my house makes it look like a dump. And now that the turkey vultures have found it and start roosting in there, it's certifiably a dump. So that I have to add. Our property values have definitely gone downhill. MPAC isn't reevaluating this year due to COVID. So next year they will, but I'm not sure if they're going to, this will be addressed, because at this point in time, I couldn't sell my house if I wanted to, because nobody's going to buy it across the road from that. And I'm hoping that our property taxes will be lowered in reflection of that as well. The other big problems with that is with the quarry operation over there is a proximity to the CN Kingston main rail line. Okay, when he blasted in March of 2018, he was calving from the face of the quarry, the same as Morley had done when he blasted it there. He was calving off the face, and that was fine. But in June of this year, when he started to blast, he's running farther down the seam in places that have never been blasted before. And he's running right parallel to the railroad tracks. And we measured it out, and it was within 23 meters of the railroad tracks. How CN isn't doing backflips over that one, I don't know. They were contacted. They did send out the telemetry car and did their readings on the tracks. But as far as I know, none of the engineers, civil engineers, come out with boots on the ground to have a look at what is happening out there, which should be, because they hold federal authority. And when he had blasted, when he blasted in March of 2018, he did use the blasting mats. I lost my well in 2018. He fired the prime out of my well. It took me an entire day to get it back. And when I did, I had a lot of silt and a lot of sludge and crud and discolored water coming up through my well. And this is a new well that I had put in 2010. So that time it would have been 8 years old. For everything, my pipes, my lines, my pump, my pressure tank, everything was brand new, less than 8 years old, and it got fouled. Over 24 hours before I was running clean water through my well again. But since the activity started up in April of this year over the quarry, we've been getting a lot of silt and sediment coming through our wells from the air tracks, the hoe rams that he runs over there with the drilling, and also with the blasting in June, created excessive sediment and silt in our wells. This is a concern to us because it's limestone. He's blasting limestone. It's very porous. There is voids in it. Anything can happen. He says, yes, I use professionals, and no doubt about it, the guys from FDB are professional blasters. But there's still inherent problems. Anything can go wrong. When it did blast in 2018 and did use mats, a piece of that mat landed right in front of my mailbox across the road from my house, sat there for 2 years. It was pieces of cut up tires that hang on like a chain link fence. And it was a section about 2 feet by 2 feet that got blasted off the face and ended up right in front, across the road from my house, still almost on his property, but a couple of feet away from my mailbox. So to say that accidents don't happen and things like that, no, that's wrong, because they do. The last time when he blasted, there was no match used, and there is the problem with fly rock. It creates fly rock. Under the provincial guidelines, blasting is supposed to be cleared within 400 meters of the blast area, with no personnel to be within a 400-meter zone. He doesn't have 400 meters to clear people out here. There's not enough room. There was no traffic that was stopped on County Road 8. Cars were still going past. There was almost an accident because somebody jumped on the binders and people were honking their horns because they were shocked because there was an explosion went off about 200 meters to the left of them while they're going down County Road 8. There's a lot of inherent problems that come along with this, with blasting in this area that should not be permitted. Again, it has to do with it's incompatible zoning and incompatible uses for our houses. Our houses were here first before he came in.
Now, Don, can I just stop you there and ask you a question?
Absolutely.
You're referring to he. Are you referring to
Aaron White? Sorry.
Are you referring to Morley, or are you referring to Mr. White?
No, I'm referring to Mr. White, because none of us really had problems with Morley McFarland.
Okay. I just want to make sure we've got the right he in my
Okay,
notes.
sorry. Yes, I should have clarified instead.
I'll let you go on for about another 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm sure that there will be some questions. Plus, we have a report from our end as well that we want to review. So go ahead, Don. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Thank you. Okay, so there's 26 houses that border the property of the quarry. There's 9 of us on the top deck on County Road 8, and the remainder on Little Creek Street. And the way that our houses are orientated, the people on Little Creek Street, when they look out into their backyards, now they see an eyesore. They see demolition, they see trucks, they see this. It's ruined their view, and it's ruined the way that people can enjoy their yards. And that's why we bought our rural houses, because they were nice before. And nobody ever had a problem with the amount of blasting or aggregate that Morley ever removed, because he was way below industrial standards. He only blasted twice that I ever know of, and I've been here 22 years. He's blasted twice that I know of, and he was lucky to take 3 truckloads out per week at the max. And it was seasonal with him. Whereas this guy is industrial. He's got no shortage of people. He's got 22 people work for him. He does large scale things, right? This guy's got millions of dollars. He's got no shortage of it, and it affects us greatly in our houses. And none of us out here are millionaires. We are working class, blue collar people that, have our homes, pay our mortgages, pay our taxes, and do our best for our own living. And then that brings me to the bylaws, the town of Napanese bylaws that are in place that are not being enforced upon the quarry. When the zoning come in, because he has an M4 industrial extraction zoning for part of that property, and the other half is zoned for the quarry. In the M4 provisions, it is stated, so this is in regulatory provisions of the M4 zoning, section 5, that, okay, so stockpiling operation, which is what he has a lot of out there, is stockpiled aggregates. So stockpiling operation shall not be within 30 meters of the boundary of the pit or quarry, or within 100 meters of a dwelling house or dwelling unit in the area zoned for residential purposes, where such lands are held under distinct and separate ownership. So this is us. And so the piles that he has stacked in there are definitely under 100 meters from our front doors. They definitely are. And also in the regulatory provisions, it also states in section C, that a new extractive operation involving the blasting of consolidated rock or the processing quarry stone shall be prohibited within 300 meters of a dwelling house or dwelling unit or the area zoned solely for residential purposes where the lands are held under a distinct and separate ownership. He doesn't have 300 meters. Between County Road 8 and the railroad tracks is only 250 meters. So I don't know if there was an abutment made or a variance made, but within the provisions of the M4 zone, he's not in compliance with it when it comes to blasting and the stockpiling of his aggregates. And also within the general provisions, there's supposed to be a 1.5 meter hedgerow planting strip, continuous hedgerow planting strip that goes all the way around the property anywhere where it abuts onto residences. There's no hedgerow out here. And ideally, if you ever see a quarry, that's the thing, you don't see a quarry. Quarries are always buried. They're under berms, they're hidden. You might see the driveway, the access road to a quarry, but seldom, if ever, do you actually see a quarry. Whereas this one it's on the road. It's a wayside quarry. So it is right there in full view. And believe me, it's an eyesore when you drive past it every day. Worse when you live across the road from it. And it'd be nice if anything could be done that the bylaws that are already in place that control these things would be enforced. And if the bylaws could be enforced, then that would be a help to us as well. I did actually have the time to actually have a look at the report that was commissioned by Mike Nobes. And I must say, a great job, bravo to Mike Nobes for creating this, the council. And he also gave us a couple of ideas about how this can be dealt with. Okay. Missing one page. Am I still here? Yep. Page 4. If I had it, I'd be dangerous. I got it now. Here we are. Okay. So this is what we are going to ask of council. After we'd read the report that Mike Nobes had written out, and it talked about the interim control bylaws. And I thought this is very interesting because I'd never read up on these or understood it before. But after reading that, so council does have the ways and means to put an end to this guy, to put an end stop to it. So what we ask is, our first ask is going to be an interim controlled bylaw be enacted by council that would prohibit all operations on that property for a period of up to 2 years. And the reason why we ask that, because that would be enough time that Queen's Park would be back in full force and be able to pass the Aggregate Reform Act. And hopefully that would deal with the quarry issue across here. I understand that's a stretch, but if that doesn't come into play and it can't be dealt with, then we'd also ask that no rezoning amendments be made for him, or easements or variances be granted to these properties, because it is under question. The third is the civic bylaws concerning the hedgerow and the distance of separation for the M4 zoning be enforced. And the fourth thing is that the information that was submitted by Surgeon Cindy Kosasis that cited references and precedences that were ruled upon by the OMB in almost identical cases be given careful consideration and deliberation in this matter.
Okay, thanks.
And I thank council.
Yeah, no, at this point, I'm going to ask council if they have any questions for Don. Yeah, certainly, Councillor Pennell. And this, Don, the rules of the pool are, it's my pool. So there can be conversation back and forth, but it will be respectful and it will be something that we can use as knowledge going down. This gets to be a hot item, I know, and I want us to make headway in this and play nicely. So Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thanks, Don, and everybody else that gave us this report. I just have to clarify a couple of things. One is that when you're talking about property values and MPAC assesses your house at a value so that your taxes are based upon that.
Mhm.
That doesn't have anything to do with the value of what your house is worth on an open market to a willing buyer. So I just want to put that out to you, and you may be surprised.
Okay.
One thing I would like to know too is I don't need an answer for this. This is more of a statement. I truly hope that when you're doing your measurements, that you're not trespassing on an open pit without the owners.
Absolutely not. Google Earth is a vital tool.
Okay, yeah, no, I just, as I said, I was just a statement on that because of liability reasons, and we don't want anybody to get hurt, that's for sure. I was out by there today. And first of all, I know that from the other report, there was a statement that we didn't read the documents and such, which is untrue. We are taking this very seriously. As a matter of fact, I was out there today, and I parked on Little Creek Street or Little Creek Road, and I looked into the back of the pit. And I clearly don't think that a 1.5 meter high berm or planting is going to hide that, because it's, well, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I shot it with my golf scope, and it was about 24 meters difference. So 1.5 meters in height. So 1.5 meters isn't quite going to cover that. And I totally understand what you're talking about, looking back into that. As for the zoning, Mr. Nobes is online with us today. I'm not sure if he's going to speak in regards to that or not. Let's see, what else did I write down here? And most definitely, the blasting without the stopping of traffic is something that we really need to speak about. It's not a case of whether blasting mats are used or not. As you mentioned, things happen, and they could come apart and it could cause something. So that's all I really have for now. I'm gonna let the others speak, and if I have a chance, if something pops up, if I have a chance to speak again, I'll ask you some questions. But once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further from council? No, so I'm going to does council have questions that they would like to direct to Michael? No, not at this, oh, Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, Mayor. Could we just have Mr. Nobes talk to us about the M4 zoning, and whether there is something, if those numbers are correct, which I'm sure they are, because it looked like that he was reading, Mr. Eddington, sorry, was reading from a piece of paper. Has there been, if those numbers are correct with the M4 and they're not in those barriers, has there been an amendment done or something for that particular piece of property?
There has not been a site-specific amendment for the property. However, just
Michael, can you turn your volume up, please, and thank you.
It may be related to your earpiece. That's worse. There.
Is that better?
Yes.
That's better.
Okay. There has not been a site-specific amendment to the property on which the quarry is located. Though if I could just address the statement about the blasting within 500 meters of a residence. So in the general provisions of the zoning bylaw, we state that no new dwelling house shall be located within 500 meters of an area zoned for extractive industrial use. So that is to be taken into account when applications to create new lots are within 500 meters of areas zoned for extractive use, and no new quarry operations are to be permitted within 300 meters of residential use. So this quarry has been zoned in this manner since the early 70s, I believe. And that has carried through into the town of Greater Napanese zoning bylaw now. So this property has been zoned as such and zoned for extractive use for quite some time. When the lots were created on Little Creek Road, I believe there was a lesser setback requirement. Rather than 500 meters, I believe it was in the 300-meter range. So there must have been some variances provided at the time to create those lots, both across the road on County Road 8 and on Little Creek Road as well. So yes, there is a requirement to provide a planting strip, as has been noted. However, the blasting is within the requirements of the bylaw today.
Thank you.
If I may interject for one moment, please.
Okay.
Our properties were here before that. I understand that the industrial usage was granted in 1974. My house was built in 1968. The majority of these houses here were built in the late 60s, early 70s, and the houses on Little Creek Street were built in the early 70s before the industrial extraction permit ever went through in 74. Those houses were already established. We were here first.
Sorry, Don, there are a lot of those houses that were built after 1974 as well, though, on Little Creek Street. And I realize
Some of them, yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Michael, go ahead, please.
If there are any specific questions that council has, I'd certainly like to address those.
Anything specific before we give Michael some direction here? Councillor Pannell?
Thank you, Worship. Michael, again, I thank you for the note today on the ICBC. Could you just go with that? If we had an interim bylaw, that would only prevent any new changes to the existing property, correct? It wouldn't stop what he's doing right now. Is that true?
That is correct to an extent. I mean, council could pass an interim control bylaw to rescind those uses, those permissions at the property. But generally, interim control bylaws are brought in to address emerging land use issues that are assumed to be provided. So if it's not explicitly stated, but it's implied, interim control bylaws are brought in to essentially squash those possibilities for land uses. However, these are permitted land uses that have been in effect for quite some time. So it would be a little bit unorthodox to do so.
Great. Okay, thank you, sir.
If I may again.
I'll let you one more and then we've got to move on, okay?
Thank you. Even though they're saying that the permitted land uses and it's been in use for this many years, it sat fallow for over 12 years. It was never used. When Morley used it very little, never to the full extent of the industrial extraction that is in there today. And it wasn't to the same extent. But on the other hand, I got lost in my words. It shouldn't be permitted because it did set fallow for so many years. And how can he just come in as a new owner buying this in 2017 and the quarry's got a permit for life on it and the zoning lasts forever on it too, and he can walk in after a piece of land that sat fallow for 12 years and pick it up and then just turn it into whatever he wants. It defies logic.
Michael, did you wish to speak to that?
Your worship. So although the use was dormant per se for quite some time, the zoning rights were always in place. So there was no rescinding of zoning permissions for the property. The M4 permissions were always in place. If there were, if council decided to make a zoning change and totally remove the M4 requirements prior to that period of dormancy, it would be a different ballgame, certainly. However, since those zoning permissions have always been in place, the current owner certainly was able to kickstart the operation again. However, if, for example, if council decided to change the M4 zone to a rural zone that did not include extractive uses today, if council decided to do that today, the operation can still continue as a legal non-conforming use because the operation was in effect prior to removing those zoning rights. And if there was a period of dormant operation, you know, there was no intent to continue the operation, then the use would have to cease. That did not take place. So the zoning rights have been in place for quite some time and have been continuous.
I see, Don, where you're heading at it, and we're certainly, I'm going to call the deputation to an end unless council has more questions. And then we're certainly going to have questions for Michael. I thank you and the two other gentlemen for bringing this forward. Unfortunately, you know, there are our standards set out and our laws set out. And it's, I see what is happening that has upset you, but we have to make sure that we're fair to everyone. You do have some valid points that we wish to discuss and have property standards or Michael go out and say, here are some of the things that we're doing. And hopefully we can make this work for both sides. But I can assure you that when Morley's sons were selling that pit, they were selling it as operational. They weren't selling it as something that had sat dormant. So, you know, it's unfortunate. And you're right, Morley, with those old green trucks used to pull out of there 2 or 3 times a year. He was a great friend of ours. And I'm sure that in some places we more than likely have some material from that. It's certainly a different operation from what you're looking at now, but unfortunately, by the looks of it, it's certainly allowed. But we'll see what we can come up with as a council to try and work together so that Mr. White is able to operate safely and that you feel that there's been some movement forward. If the Aggregate Act goes through and things are repealed, then it's a whole different story. But you're right, that's a couple of years ahead. It's not high on their priority list at this point in time. Okay, and still keep good records. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I thank you for all the time and effort that you and all the neighbors have put into this. Okay, thanks very much, Don. Have a good evening.
We thank you for your opportunity and listening to us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so is Mr. Eddington going to be out of the screen now? Susan? Great, thanks. Okay, questions for Council of Michael. Instructions, Council, where do you want to go with this? Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Actually, just as a point of order, should we not receive the deputation first and then move on to 4.4?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Sorry.
So motion to receive the deputation.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Kaiser, Councillor McCormack, all in favor of that motion. Motion is carried. Also, we have Mr. King's letter that we should be receiving as well, which is 4.35 or 4.3.5. I'm requesting, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to move to receive it.
Okay, move to receive by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Richardson. All in favor of that motion. Motion is carried. Thank you. So we also have Michael's report. 4.4 infrastructure services. Discussion, questions for Michael. Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to ask through you, Your Worship, I'd like to ask Michael that if there was ever a challenge to the LPAT, if we were to put in an interim control bylaw, if we were to refuse zoning, any of those decisions around this property, what do you think is defendable at LPAT? Because I would expect that somebody who paid a small ransom for that property as an industrial use who suddenly gets denied in the future, he's going to have some issues. He's going to put up a fight. what's defendable? What can we reasonably do or not do in this case? And I recognize that this is a really subjective question, but that's what I'm asking anyways, please.
Through your worship, can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. An interim control bylaw that is first enacted cannot be challenged to the LPAT. However, we could be challenged in court. So although we're not able to be appealed to the LPAT based on passing of this bylaw, since interim control bylaws are meant to be time sensitive bylaws that are passed to address a very urgent issue, we could still be challenged to court too. So there's that to consider. Although we're not going to the LPAT, we could be going to court for damages, right? Operations would have to cease, etc. If an interim control bylaw were to be passed, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has the only right to appeal it, actually. So if we did pass one, then the minister could actually appeal it. And I would think that they would have some grounds to do so, just due to the amount of time that those zoning rights have been in place. However, if there were a bylaw passed and the 1 year period for it were to be extended, that could then be appealed. So interim control bylaws are only in effect for 1 year at a time, up to a maximum of 2 years. So if there were a desire to extend it and there were another bylaw passed to extend it, then that could certainly be appealed by the property owner in that case. Does that answer your question, Councillor Kaiser or Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions or comments or directions for Michael in this file? If not, you have a recommendation before you that we received for information, the Development Services Report on the Quarry. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of the motion? Motion opposed? No one? Motion is carried. Thank you. Infrastructure Services Staff Report 2914 Big Creek Road Rezoning Bylaw Amendment PLZACO 2020-029. Michael Hunt. Staff recommendation that council receive for information and further that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application PLZACO 2020-029 subject to the following conditions: that council consider and decide on the merits of written and verbal submissions received up to and including the council meeting. And secondly, that should new information be received or further input received, raise points for further consideration, this report and opinion hereby be revisited as needed. Council's wishes or questions for Michael? Councillor McCormack?
No, I just making the motion.
Move to approve. Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Comments or questions? Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, through you, Worship. Michael, by making this bylaw, this would now bring that out of a legally non-conforming. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, if this particular house happened to be destroyed somehow through whatever means, whoever the owner is has the right to rebuild on that same property, even though that we're changing the frontage, right? Does that make sense? Is that what I'm trying to say? Help me out here.
That is
okay. So
that's correct.
So if we were to do this today, if something happens, then the new homeowners, whatever, have the right to rebuild. As I've seen in the report, that there's enough room for a new septic system if something happens. So I was happy to see that. But my only concern was in case of a house got destroyed. So
that's correct. We're recognizing the slightly deficient size of the lot. We're bringing it into conformity and we're legalizing that through the passing of this bylaw.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a mover and a seconder. Any further questions or comments from Michael? If not, all in favor of the motion. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. CAO, lifting of emergency declaration. You have the August 25th report in front of you. You have a recommendation that council receive for information and that council further provide direction regarding the emergency declaration. Council's wishes or comments, whichever way you'd like to go with this. Councilor Pennell.
Through you, your worship, is this not the same report as what we had last?
Yes, it is, because absolutely nothing has changed.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councilor McCormick, did you have your hand up? Okay, sorry. Councilor Norrie?
Well, we know why we're here. I'll just make a motion that effective September the 9th, we lift the state of emergency completely, 2020. September the 9th, 2020, just to get the discussion going if it's seconded.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councilor Richardson. Comments or questions? And I'd kind of like to hear from everybody on this, but it's your choice. Who'd like to start it? Councilor Pennell, and then I'll go. Did you have your hand up, Terry? Yeah, okay, we'll go to Councilor Pennell and then I'll come to you, okay?
Through your worship, I'm just wondering, when would the state of emergency be lifted if it wasn't lifted tonight? It would be the end of September anyway, would it not?
There is no solid, I would have to say no solid date for it. Many municipalities are looking at the end of September for many reasons. Some of them to get themselves situated in meeting areas, to get their bylaws done like we did so that we can meet. It just seems to be a variance. I don't think that there is a date of choice, but I'll speak to that later when everybody else is through.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Richardson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to keep this very straightforward and simple. It's time to lift this state of emergency. We've been in an emergency state since the middle of March. I weigh heavily on the fact that the reasons why we should maintain it aren't really reasons to keep our community safe. The reasons to maintain the state of emergency are for financial reasons, for reasons that we have contract people that need to be extended, which is very easily done. We can do that and extend that for 30, 60, 90 days, whatever the case may be, in order to make sure that our employees aren't running short. I think there was one other reason, if I'm not mistaken, but to extend it isn't to maintain safety within our community. We've done that. We've done everything that we can do. We've been working with our health unit, been working with our upper tier of government. So and I don't mean to say it this way, but it almost reeks of an abuse of power to a certain extent, and the fact that there's really no need to maintain it. The province has lifted the state of emergency. The province has, in order to do that, they've created bylaws, or they've created an act in order to keep the community safe. So they took it out of the state of emergency. So the time is now. It really is. We've got provisions in place, both within the organization, within the health unit, within the province, in order to keep and maintain people's safety. So I believe that the time to do it is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Johnson, and then I'll go to Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree that it would be a good time to lift the state of emergency. I have full faith that everybody on this council would listen to the recommendations of the health unit and take any steps necessary to enact what the health unit needed us to do in order to keep our population safe. And I feel people are looking for a return to normalcy. And there's so much stress, especially at this time of year with back to school and all of the other challenges that are going on, that if lifting the state of emergency doesn't put anyone at risk, and we are committed to continuing to take care of our community, then perhaps lifting it is a little bit of a mental release for some of our people as well. That's it.
Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
So, Councillor Richardson hit one of the nails right off in saying it's financial. And I know further on in our agenda, we're going to be talking about the emergency funding that's coming down from the provincial level, which is to address additional costs incurred by COVID. And in that report, it refers to a second intake stream deadline of November or October 31st / November 6th. Should there be costs continuing into 2021? And I want to raise that right now because I'm sure we're not the only municipality that's considering it. I'm sure there's probably some that have lifted the state of emergency. We can't be shooting ourselves in the foot entirely because the province knows this whole new normal, if you will, is going to extend another year or more. There is going to be additional cost burdens on municipalities. I am concerned about whether or not we're going to limit our accessibility to some of those funds in the future. So I'd like to know, does anybody know if there's an effort undertaken at AMO or Roma or any of the upper level associations that is lobbying the provincial government to continue making those funds available? Because we are entering a new normal. We need to start moving in a way that is approaching some sense of normal with protocols to keep us safe due to COVID. But I think the emergency, I'm sort of in agreement that the emergency is moving out of a phase of urgency or strange or unusual to a new normal. We keep hearing that. Health units talk about it. The provincial government's talked about it. So if this is a new normal, then let's move on with it. But at the same time, I'd like to know that there's some lobby effort happening on our part or with our input to continue access the availability of those emergency funds. And if anyone had any questions or any comments to make about that, whether that's our treasurer or CAO or whoever, but really, I guess I'm in support of lifting it at this point in time. If that's the only reason, I don't think that's reason enough. I think we're entering a new normal.
I know that certainly there has been a lot of lobbying with AMO. Remember that only 229 of the 444 municipalities declared a state of emergency because some of them, believe it or not, are untouched by this whole COVID-19, or they just were under the guise of their upper tier, if that was it, or their region. So I know that there's certainly lobbying going on there, but it is not an unending pot. We're all going to pay for it eventually. And really, our municipality has been financially very sound in it. Anything further from council? Well, I tell you, I've been back and forth on this a million times, and a million times today. I feel very strongly in opposite polar directions. I feel strongly that we need to support the health unit by staying with all the lower tiers of Frontenac and Lennox and Eddington to make sure that we are supporting them. On the weekend, and this is something I didn't realize, and I sure would never want to enact this, but the mayor of Kingston, because they are still under a state of emergency, had to put an emergency order in place on Friday night to clear out the swimming place that's across from Queens. Gord, what am I trying to say here?
Just call it the pier.
The pier. Because they did not have, they just could not control them. So they sent all kinds of police in and all their bylaw control officers. And more than likely, that's going to be something that they may get some money for doing. Because it was a real safety thing. There were close to 400 people there. So I would have to hope that we would never be put in that position. If any of you are going to have a party of that size, I would like to know so that we can have the police lined up, please. I feel very strongly about staying in, but I also, for very different reasons, feel strongly about supporting council in trying to move forward. I don't think I'm going to have to worry much about the way that the vote is going to go. Our emergency systems were never meant to handle this length of an emergency, as I keep saying, which sounds crazy. You know, we needed a flood or an earthquake or a fire or something quick to get us in and out of this and get going again. And I understand where council is coming from. I don't completely agree with them, but I understand it. But our council has been in on, other than maybe a piece of plexiglass here and there. So there seems to be some kind of misconception that we did not get as a council to make decisions, because we sure did. I think we spent 2 hours on landfills and 4 hours on boat launches. So certainly there was lots and lots of input, also our playgrounds and so on. And I think that's right. I think that's what we should do. I would not want to have seen that decided by an MECG or an EOC. So until schools get back in, until we know that's going to work, when you're trying to cram 20 or 25 kids in a room that, granted, they're staying there. You know, I don't know how many of you today, and I guess maybe if I look around at the age group, it's not really grandchildren, but you know, I had grandchildren tuned off to school today that I'm certainly thinking about what they're doing. Most of them have been working in stores and have been really exposed to this. We as a council made all the decisions on the financial as well, the deferral of taxes, the deferral of interest, the deferral, the bag tags. It isn't that we haven't had input, but I'm hoping that we never ever have to throw another one of these on, because there is another one. All I'm asking you is don't make this a tie vote, because I'm not sure which way I would be voting, to support you to come out of it, or to support the upper tier, which certainly will stay. I think we're a month early. I think I would like to see what would be what the schools are doing and what they might need from us, God forbid. And I'm sure that we're going to have a second and third wave. We have to be ready for it. We're certainly going to have to cooperate with the health unit in making sure that we have a place open for immunization, that we have a place open for testing. I guess too, I feel badly about Dr. Morrison and Dr. Moore having done all their work and having this go so well, because people have listened. And I'm hoping that if council decides tonight to lift this, then is that telling our people that we're supposed to be looking after, that voted us in, are we telling them that it's okay, sky's the limit, do what you want, folks? And I think we have to be very clear in that message, that it's far from it. We feel as a municipality that we want to go forward. It is not that we don't believe that COVID's here, and that we need to support the health units and the upper tier. Any further? Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Oh, you had lots of good ones there, and it inspired me in many ways. Yeah, so we're one of a group under the KFL&A over one municipality. And I'm not about not supporting the KFL&A health unit in their work and in what they've done for us. But at the same time, I also don't want to be blindly following them. We're not the medical experts, but we are the boots on the ground in our municipality to know how things are implemented and enacted and how things happen and flow. And there's been times when I didn't see the wisdom in them. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but all I'm going to say is it was a health unit that allowed nail salons to open. And that didn't play out so well. So it's not perfect wisdom at that level is what I'm saying. And I think there should be a little more consultation between the municipalities and the health unit in developing policies going forward. But again, you know, we do have to move forward. We can move backwards at any time, and everybody can know that, and we can communicate that forward as we move out of this, if that's the way we go. You know, a new wave hits us and suddenly we've got, you know, 20 cases in LNA County. Yeah, we slide back to level 2 or level 1 strict, or who knows what at the time, whatever's appropriate. But right now, it's really quiet out there. I'm not very worried about the kids in our schools in our town right now, because there aren't any cases right here, right now. And we do have measures in place, and we still have a mask rule, and we still have a social distancing rule. And if you go to the bank, you have to line up on the street. If you go to Service Ontario, you have to line up outside. And, you know, we've got all these things that are being maintained, and we can still maintain all of those sort of COVID safety protocols. But operationally, I think it's time for us to maybe be the leader of the pack and be the first one to just say, you know, we can be a little more normal while still following those protocols. That's, I think, all I wanted to say about that.
Anything further? Mr. Cowrie has popped up.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, to council and to Councillor Richardson's point that he raised earlier, just on the human resources side, is if there's a motion that is brought forward, which I believe it is to lift the emergency, if council would be in favor of allowing staff a 30-day extension on the two possible effective contracts. Within 30 days, all of those human resources issues would be resolved with normal posting processes. So that would be all that I would ask on council's behalf, if they would just consider giving a 30-day extension on the staff at the ability to extend for 30 days existing contracts.
So somebody's got to remember that we'll do that. So Terry, you want to add that or sorry, Councillor Norrie made it, and a friendly amendment that you would add with Mr. K and Terry, yes. And you know, I'm not going to shut up on this, even though I'm going to agree with you. But there are people out there listening that I want to make sure they understand just what we're doing tonight. We went from stage 1 to stage 2, and we had to roll back because of a nail salon, because of nail salons. And it took hours of time and testing to get over 700 people back for contact tracing. I don't want to see that happen in the schools. That's when the Section 22 of the Health Unit or the Health Act kicked in, and that's when we went to mandatory masks. And I do believe that that's something that we have to do. Now it's not nail clinics, you know, it's youth, and we have to support our businesses too. So whether we lift or not, we have to make sure that we're very aware of how they swing with changes. The worst thing that we could have, because some of them are hanging on just by the skin of their teeth down there and up there and over there. We need to make sure that we're not putting them in a spot where we have to slam the door and say, okay, we're stage 2. Well, geez, maybe we're going back to stage 1. And it's going to be harder to shut people down again. But that's all I'm going to say on it. I'm pretty sure you know how I feel. Trendsetter. I don't think I've ever shot for that, so that's not gonna swing me one way or the other. With that, if there's nothing further, don't make me break a tie, because I'm still not sure. All in favor of lifting it with the addition of the 2 contract workers that we extend their contracts 30. All in favor of the motion? I don't have to vote. Thank you very much, people. Carried. Okay. Good conversation. CUPE, request to proclaim the 20th Annual Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Education Appreciation Day to be October the 22nd. You have a recommendation, whereas years of research confirms the benefits of high quality childcare for for young children's intellectual, emotional, and social and physical development and later life outcomes. And whereas childcare promotes the well-being of children and responds to the needs of parents and the broader community by supporting quality of life so that citizens can fully participate in and contribute to the economic and social life of their community. And whereas trained and knowledgeable ECE and childcare staff are the key to quality and early learning in childcare programs and champions for it. Therefore, be it resolved that that October 22nd, 2020, as the 20th Annual Childcare Worker and Early Childhood Education Appreciation Day in the town of Greater Napanee, in recognition of the education, dedication, and commitment of childcare workers to children, their families, and the quality of life in the community. Moved by Councillor Johnson, Councillor Richardson. All in favor, comments or questions? Nice to see them open up again because it's good for jobs. Councillor McCormack, your light came on. Did you want to say something? No. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Safe Restart Funding, Phase 1 funding. You have a recommendation that we should receive for information the correspondence from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated August the 12th, 2020, providing information regarding the Safe Restart Funding Phase 1 allocation of funding for the town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Pennell, Councillor McCormack. Comments or questions? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. I noticed that our Treasurer Paul Delver is on, and I'm wondering, looking at the one paragraph, it says to be considered for Phase 2 funding, reports are due by October 30th. Are we good for that? Is there any concerns from your department as far as getting in there to submit reports, operating costs and all that stuff?
Paul, Paul.
Oh, we can't hear you. I think that's it. Nope.
There you go.
Nope. He's going to do something with his fingers and maybe the sound will come.
Mr. Cowrey's jumping in.
Members of council, staff are pretty confident that we can make the deadlines. We've been collecting the data all throughout. Our GL was established. Mr. Dauber had the GL established to track these, and we've been billing all of our costs as we go throughout since the emergency was declared. So we should be in a good position to make those reporting deadlines.
Good, thank you.
Good enough, thank you.
Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder, Susan? Yes, okay, or Max? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, thank you. 4.9, Lofanale request for a 30-day patio license extension. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Yeah, so there's a bit of an ad hoc committee under the MECG that look at these different things. And I know I just wanted to share with the group that there was a bit of an email that went around behind this and nobody on the group had any concerns. And that includes Kevin Duncan from the fire department. As far as safety, I just note that there is the subject to the county approval, but as far as our local group, nobody had a concern about it.
Okay, so council's wishes. Obviously, he's hoping for good weather. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor McCormack. Any further comments or questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Alzheimer's Society of KFLNA request to proclaim World Alzheimer's Day to be September the 21st, 2020. You have the recognition before you. So therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Greater Napanee hereby declares September the 21st, 2020 to be World Alzheimer's Day in the Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Bylaws. Bylaw number 2020-0053, PLZACO 2020-029, zoning bylaw amendment to bylaw number 0222 as amended, 2914 Big Creek. First, second, and third, Councillor Pennell, Councillor McCormack, all in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Bylaw number 2020-0054 to regulate the feeding of wildlife. Bylaw number 2020-0054. First, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Richardson. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
sorry,
certainly.
sorry to interrupt you here. The only reason why I'm opposed is that I don't feel as we as a council had the time to discuss this and find out the backstory and exactly what was going on. And I see that there's the feeding of birds at a bird feeder, if it was on the property, is fine and stuff, but I don't have the background on this, and so that's the only reason why I opposed this. We saw that Councillor Norrie made the notice of motion, but then we've never really had the time to discuss this. And I was when I opened up my package, and there it was, and I read it, and I was just hoping for some communication and to find out what's really going on here.
Councillor Norrie, I know this is after the fact, but Councillor Norrie.
Yeah, I thought I replied to your email when I got it. I've been bringing this up at council for over 2 months. I've delivered these flyers to neighbors due to the problems. I explained it at council meeting. It has the M&R stuff in it, as was questioned by the deputy. Been doing everything I can to help these residents. I didn't put a notion in motion. I put a motion out for a bylaw. I backed off last one so the town could reword a few things, but I'm helping the residents that are getting harassed. That's why I did it. I've discussed it for 2 months.
Oh, okay. I feel that I see that you feel strong about that. Anyway, I guess that's all I'm going to say at this particular time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bylaw number 2020-0055 to amend the procedural bylaw 2008-58 to permit electronic meetings. Susan, I just want to clarify on this that this is going to cover us for everything that we need with the exception of proxy voting. Am I right?
Through you, yes, it does not include anything to do with proxy voting.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions of Susan before we get this in place? Okay. First, second, and third readings. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, Councillor Norrie. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Statements by members. Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
I guess it's somewhat of new business more than statements by members. Will you accept that?
Sure.
So I understand that we all receive phone calls, or most of us receive phone calls about the work that was done at JJ O'Neill by town staff. And I would like to request a report on that and the implications and the going forwards for the future, if we could have that at our next meeting, please, to discuss. The work's done now, but before we set a precedent or move forward, I think we should talk about that.
Okay, you're directing that to Mr. Calery?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Mr. Calery, I see you were up on the screen. Did you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that there was concerns raised. There was work started. It was not completed, but there was work started. All work has stopped, and a full report can be at our next meeting.
Okay.
I certainly don't want to put anybody on the hot seat on it without notice, so that's why I asked for it for the next meeting.
So Susan, would you like that by way of motion? So moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser that we get a report at our next council meeting regarding the playground work that involves JJ O'Neill. Is that wordy enough for you, Deputy Mayor Kaiser? Seconded by?
Wordy enough.
Wordy enough. Seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further statements? Yeah, Councillor McCormack.
Your worship, I just wanted to bring up property standards for a moment. We had a conversation at last council, I believe, and I understood at the time that there was a group of 4 staff members, I believe, that were involved in having these meetings. So I just wanted to remind that myself and the other councillors, I'm sure, have concerns about properties in their wards that they would like to bring forward for discussion. So I'd like to know when the next meeting is going to happen, if that's possible, and how we're going to proceed to include council members.
So I just want to ask you a question here because I'm not even sure. What 4 people are involved in property standards?
Well, I believe it was, I'm going by memory, Susan.
Okay, staff was what you're talking about.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, not council.
Yeah. So just to, I see that Mr. Cowrie has popped up here, but what you're asking is are we looking at having a special meeting to discuss nothing but property standards? Are we looking for updates? What's your request?
My request is that we have a format that involves council in a manner the council can put forward locations of concern and that we can follow up on this. So I'd like to know when the meetings are going to be held and have council invited to be able to put forward requests of any concerns that they have to be discussed.
So requests and follow up on ones that are already in there. Is that what you want to include?
I'm looking to know when the next meeting is going to happen. I'm looking to be invited so that I can put forward some concerns and then go from there.
Okay, so easy peasy. I was trying to confuse it. I think that's a fair request. Susan?
Through you, I believe there was a resolution passed at the previous council meeting in August to extend the invitation to council. The next meeting is next week, but staff was intending to send the invitation out to council. We do have to be cognizant of quorum, so we would not be able to have any more than 3 members of council at a meeting. It is an internal staff committee meeting, so just to ensure that we don't have quorum of council.
Okay. Your worship, no, that's great, as long as we know there's a process in place and that there's an invitation or a notice forthcoming. I have these locations that I keep jotting down and I keep meaning to bring forward, and this is the format that I'm looking for.
Okay, perfect. Do you want that, Susan? We already have that by resolution then. Okay, so we don't need that. Any other statements by members? Yeah, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to give a shout out to the fire chief and emergency services for the great job that they did at their charity car wash. I was over there to see them on Saturday. The process that they had was great. So it was like a little drive-through, and it was a great job. And my car has never been clean in the last couple months. So it was a great job, and I saw the numbers that they gathered, and so great job to everybody. Thank you.
Anything further? Any further statements by members? Just one really quick one here. We will still have to have, I'm sure, an exit meeting for the MECG for the town, even though we're coming out of a state of emergency, because there will still be things that will be needed to be tidied up, and the things, the records and so on put, where if we were ever challenged on anything, we would be able to cover the liability. I also think that it's something, and it's not dire emergency, poor wording, sorry, that I think too, even though we do not have to do an emergency planning this year, I think the Ford government has said we've been through enough of emergency planning. We don't need to do it for 2021, if I'm not mistaken. That council we do a review to see and see if there are any changes that you might recommend that you'd go through. One of them would be, we'll never allow COVID-19 to happen again. That would be the first one. We'll go for something easy. And I do want to publicly thank all the staff members that were part of that committee. It worked seamlessly. Lots of good discussion. Sometimes they were long, sometimes they were short, but it is a good setup. It's a good way to do it. But I think that if council sees, and I'm sure that you do, see that there needs to be some changes in it in the coming time, and we'll just hope we don't have another emergency for a good long time. But if you've got input into it, I think that this would be the time to put it in within the next 2 or 3 months before we forget all this. So that being said, I need a motion to go into closed session, please. Adjourn into closed session pursuant to 239 of the Municipal Act. Recommendation is that council resolve itself into closed session pursuant to 239 of the Municipal Act to discuss, firstly, to adopt the closed session minutes dated August the 18th, 2020. Secondly, a matter regarding potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality and including advice that is subject to a solicitor-client privilege. And thirdly, 2 matters regarding identifiable individuals. Moved by Councillor Pennell, Councillor McCormack. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. See you shortly. Susan will send you the new link. Thanks very much.